And to our next very special guest who will be joining me online, Dr. Pearnel Bell. Dr. Bell is a consultant clinical psychologist, author, and mental health professional with extensive experience in psychological assessment, psychotherapy, organizational consultation. She's a founder of the Caribbean Diagnostic Psychotherapy Institute, where she provides clinical services, supervision, and professional training to developing practitioners. She no stranger, as we said earlier, to IRI FM. She's been on Sex-Wise for many moons, working with Nero. Her work spans clinical psychology, counseling, and organizational development, with particular interest in trauma-informed care, ethical practice, and the role of psychological insight in personal and organizational transformation. And she's an author. She has been actively involved in mentoring and supervising emerging psychologists and contributes to professional education and dialogue with the mental health community. Her most recent work is Life Mosaics, and this explores themes of personal growth, healing, and complex experiences that shape human lives. She is joining us on the phone line. She's also on Zoom. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing her. Is she with us? Dr. Bell, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Dr. Pearnel, good morning. Welcome. I'm so glad and so happy to see you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Africa Forum this morning. You're also, we didn't mention it just now, but you're also going to be the keynote at the BEV, Black Educators Voices, next week, Saturday. And we'll tell people how they can get involved in that and come and listen to you during the program. But Dr. Bell, thank you so much for joining us. Your work is so wide. You've been doing so much with various different communities in Jamaica. Tell us a little bit about that, from education to mental health. It's wide and varied. It's complex too if you look at it closely.
So I started out as a teacher, and then helping teachers to teach children and to understand them, even from that trauma-informed way. And then I segued into psychology, where I worked at the child and adolescent mental health clinics throughout Jamaica or across the Northeast region, where I intervene with them in terms of assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of mental health issues that they present with.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for being over time a consultant psychologist to IRI FM. You worked very closely with Kishiba Francis on Sex-Wise, and also I think with Sonia Sims earlier. So thank you so much for that. But what a time we're living in. Jamaica, and I'm sure you've spent a lot of time looking at the Jamaican society and issues of mental health and trauma. What are the most significant things that are standing out to you, or that have stood out to you, regarding where Jamaica is when it comes to trauma and mental health?
I think when we look at the society from both a social and psychological perspective, we begin to recognize that trauma is pervasive in our society. And if we were to really give a definition of what trauma is to help our audience to understand that, it's really a person's response to some distressing events that catch them in a state of relative helplessness. And so many of our children experience sexual abuse, physical abuse, they experience neglect and other emotional issues. They see violence, witness it, they're the objects of violence too in the society. So all of that, when we look at it, we would say that trauma is pervasive in our country.
You mentioned sexual violence and all kinds of other violence and violent acts against our children in particular. an ongoing conversation, Dr. Bell, in Jamaica for many years. From your own perspective and a professional perspective, how pervasive is, say, sexual violence as opposed to other kinds of violence, or do they intersect among our young people, children, against children in Jamaica?
While I don't have the exact statistics, I can say within even my own practice as a psychologist for over 25 years or more, I have seen that physical and sexual abuse is really very pervasive against our children here in Jamaica. Neglect too, but if I were to measure that, it would have to be both sexual and physical abuse.
Wow. Are we seeing a change in terms of whether it is the extent to which people are becoming more aware, or the reporting, or even the prevalence?
Yes, there has been improvement in that area over the years. One time it was a silent story where persons would not report those, but now we are seeing a lot more reporting. We are seeing a lot more caution in terms of even parenting and violence against children in terms of physical abuse. We have also seen that CPFSA has a greater influence here in our society, where they are now kind of mandated and in a more forceful way to ensure that our children are safe.
How traumatized are we as a society? I know it's a big one.
Yeah, but trauma is pervasive. It is pervasive because some of the practices in Jamaica that seems normal and normalized is quite traumatic for many children. When we look, for example, at parenting and maybe even the harsh way parents parent, we can say that it could be traumatizing for a child. When we look at communities and how maybe the pervasiveness of violence in the community, that has become normalized too, in a sense, where the whole idea of vigilance and the whole idea of I having to protect myself become normalized. So yeah, I would say both the witnessing of and the being the object of some kind and levels of trauma.
And to go to the topic, which is basically to, and I know we're laying the groundwork because we're going to be talking to you for a series on these, which is basically to interrogate whether or not we're raising traumatized generations, and to look at the psychological roots of crime and silence also. And generations is deliberate, because how is trauma passed down? What is it that we need to know, how trauma can be passed down from generation to generation?
Yes, so there's intergenerational trauma in the sense that one, it could come from parenting practices, and my grandmother treated my mother in a particular way, and discipline was seen as using the rod and other forms of disciplinary measures or punishment for that matter. And then you will hear people say, that is what I know. My mother used to give me some lick, and for them that's what parenting is about, and disciplining children, so they don't.
Well, spare the rod and spoil the child. I mean, it's also biblical, isn't it? Because some of this is bound up in the church and bound up also in slavery, isn't it?
You know, that is so misunderstood, that spare the rod and spoil the child, because the Bible wasn't saying abuse your child. That's what they were saying, and effect the rod in such a way. Remember, if we look back at even the kinds of tools, I call them, that are used to effect those rod, like beatings, it's not good.
Violence,
yeah. So it couldn't be the biblical way of seeing it. And using the rod is a form of discipline. And discipline comes from the word discipleship, which means to teach. So we need to
Is there a
really
special kind?
teach
Is
our
there a kind? Is
children.
there a special kind of personality disorder as opposed to mental health that it can that manifests in the abuse of others, in the way we see, some parents abuse their children, and even in domestic relationships where we see, partners abusing each other, especially men. It is what it is, especially men abusing women. Yes.
So it could be seen, in terms of social learning. You learn, and it could also be seen as psychological and psychiatric too. So social learning, I learned from my parents, and I pass it down to my children, because invariably
We're back with you inside of the Africa Forum, and believe me, we have just 10 minutes left in this segment with Dr. Bell, so I cannot believe it, Dr. Pearnel Bell. Well, you're going to come back, and that's a good thing about all of this. When we talk about raising intergenerational trauma and raising a traumatized nation, if you will, a traumatized society, let us talk about how we can begin to address these, because we seem to be patterns of behavior is what you referenced just now, and these things are not hereditary, but it seems as if they are, like lifestyle diseases. So how do we begin the change process to change the status quo?
So we have to take it from the micro, the meso, and the macro level for change. So that meso level is really the core where proper parenting. So we would shift now from punishment to really prevention. So as early as parents who are pregnant, they should be taught proper parenting, you know, early childhood intervention, and provide support for them in that microwave. And at the community level, this is going to call for programs that are going to go in and help children from that level. So remember, if they are traumatized from very early, or if there's prevention very early, then you won't have the need to be moving along in the different methodologies in terms of the METSO, which is the community level. And that community level now would look for us going into schools and helping teachers to identify, if you may, children who may be presenting with disruptive behaviors, but that is really, the disruption is masking trauma. So we'd want to do that. For the same thing, to help prevent community violence, where children are learning social learning in terms of how they're going to defend themselves, protect themselves, because they are in fear because of the kinds of violence that are perpetrated in the community. Proper policing too, where, as we now know, police organizations and situations like that where the police go in, and also help in terms of helping the youths to develop themselves in a way that help them and prevent them from this.
Right, did we lose you there? I think we, for a minute, it is a glitch, but I think she'll be back with us. So basically, so these are conversations. All right.
Too.
All right, you're back with us. There was a glitch just now, and we didn't hear what you said. The last thing we heard was when you talk about the proper policing and so on. But Dr. Bell, these solutions, and you talk about the micro solutions specifically, we've been talking about these for a while. Where are we failing ourselves? Because it seems as if each year every time we have a conversation about mental health, we go to these solutions, which obviously these are the correct solutions. But why haven't we been able to change our situation in terms of violence and mental health and trauma in Jamaica?
I think it has to do with consistency and executing the programs and ensuring that the programs are sustainable. So many times we start a program and it is going good, and then somewhere along the line that program gets sidelined, and then there's a upsurge, and then it comes back into the public purview, and then a program comes back in place, and that level of consistency. So I think we lack consistency and sustainability with many of the programs that we have in place. They should become normal now and normalized, so that that is the way things are in a way, and not just responding to crisis situation all the time.
Right, and that's the point, responding to crisis situation, and so we find ourselves in another loop of it's a paralysis of analysis, as Dr. Jeffries would say. This is where we find ourselves talking about the things that we know that we need to do, but as you say, the actions are not consistent. Part of this has to do with politics, of course, and tribalism in politics. As somebody comes in and everything changes, somebody goes out and they change again, and we've been seeing that over time. To what extent do you know if the solutions that we've discussed over time and that government have bought into and implemented and so on, to what extent are things centralized so that it doesn't even matter who is in or who is out? Can central government or centralized health providers or the health ministry, if you will, change this trajectory that we find ourselves in not being able to see this through?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not being able to see through. I would then believe that what we do need is that body of resources that would now help to sustain the programs that are, because it's not maybe even a lack of programs, because programs have come and gone. Even
Yes.
there were years ago there was a PALS program, Peace and Love in Schools,
Yes.
and that was a very, very effective program that I myself was a part of, being a trainer in that program. And
Yes,
it
and that was
worked.
supported, as you know very well. Media supported widely, including IRFM. But are
Right,
you saying that
right.
so PALS worked? You're saying PALS worked?
Yes, it did. It did to a large extent, because children were now, which is some of the things that we are still talking about, where children learned how to deal with conflict. They also learned self-regulation. And this is what we are now seeing that is absent in many of our schools, where children are not learning how emotional intelligence, how to self-regulate. If there is a conflict, how to deal with those conflicts in a way that is going to be solution focused rather than violence perpetrated.
What happened to PALS? Do you know?
As over the years, I think has lessened. I don't hear
Or
much
more
about it
things?
now. I don't think it's
I know
still
they've
in
got a
schools.
peace day and so on. I think the one just went to, but I honestly haven't heard about PALS. I want to continue this conversation with you. We're totally out of time. We're going to pick up, hopefully, if you can come back with us next week and we pick up this, because I think this is a critical conversation to have. Quickly to say, you're going to be speaking on Saturday on Bev. Do you have the details in terms of where and how people can join?
So it is Zoom. I could actually send you the Zoom information,
Okay.
and I don't know how you would get that circulated, but
I'll mention it later on in the program. But yes, so you're going to be on Bev, Black Educators Voices, an audience with Dr. Pearnel Bell. It is March 28. The host is Elaine Williams. It's 8 p.m. UK and Tunisia time, 1 p.m. Jamaica time, and 12 p.m. USA. And so I'm seeing the Zoom ID. The ID is a 391 888-7619. That's 391-888-7619. And the passcode is 104004. That's 104004. I'm seeing our listeners are saying, to make sure that we bring you back next week. So, so please, Dr. Pearnel Bell, hopefully, as it's up to your availability, we'd like to have you back with us next week to continue this conversation. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
because there are other important things that we didn't flesh out today. So I'll be
Yes.
back.
All right, brilliant. So we'll continue the conversation with Dr. Bell next week. Thank you so much, Dr. Pearnel Bell.
You're welcome. Thank
All right.
you.
In the meantime, work needs to be done, and we're going to be doing that as we stand by